Okay, good evening, everyone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk very slowly for the first 30 seconds whilst everyone is just logging on, and that buys everyone that little extra moment because it doesn't matter if you miss something I say. We just don't want you to miss what the guests say. So I'm going to just very slowly and gently welcome you all into our homes and all into JW3 for this evening. My name is Raymond Simonson. I'm very proud to be the CEO of JW3, which is London's Jewish Community Centre. And as you may have realised, the doors of our building may be closed, but our Jewish Community Centre has just moved online, and we continue exactly as before, but you just don't have to leave home and get a babysitter. So welcome everybody. If you know anything about JW3, or if you've ever heard me speak before, you know one of my favourite ways to describe JW3 is to say that we constantly seek to increase the quality, the variety, and the volume of Jewish conversation. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be invited to introduce this evening's event, because it's all about a quality conversation between two wonderful individuals. It's actually a huge personal pleasure of mine to welcome our two extraordinary guests. They are leaders, writers, activists. We have Remona Aly and Shoshana Boyd-Gelfand with us this evening for a very special conversation between these two friends. And I'm going to duck out of the way shortly, but I have to introduce them both to you. And I'm assuming that so many of you joining us this evening will know either or both of them. So forgive me if I just embarrass them a little by telling you who they are. First of all, Remona. Remona is a journalist, a broadcaster, a commentator. She has a focus on faith, lifestyle, and identity. She writes for The Guardian and other media outlets on everything from the Great British Bake Off to burkinis, from fashion to interfaith football, and from Ramadan to rock music. She's a commentator on TV and radio, and she appears on Sky News, ITV, and the BBC. She's also a podcast presenter for various platforms, including for the award-winning Things Unseen, which you probably know centres on moral, spiritual, and ethical issues. And I'm sure many of you, like me, have really enjoyed seeing her very recently on our TV screens a few times over the last week on the really lovely Channel 4 series of bite-sized films about Ramadan in lockdown. So that's Remona. Welcome, Remona. And Shoshana Boyd-Gelfand is the director of J-Hub, which is a London-based initiative launched by Pears Foundation that offers space and resources, training and development for social change organisations to work, to meet, to learn, and to grow together. She's the author of The Barefoot Book of Jewish Tales, which is a gorgeous collection of Jewish stories for children, which we were very proud to launch as one of our very first ever events at JW3 back in the autumn of 2013, and which both my children and I have loved ever since. Shoshana is also a founding fellow of the Cambridge Senior Faith Leadership Programme, which develops authentic leadership skills for senior personnel of all faiths. And Remona and I are both alumni of that prestigious programme. Shoshana is also a regular public speaker. You may have heard her, like thousands of other people who have viewed her talks at TED or Tribe Fest or Greenbelt Festival. One of the many things that Remona and Shoshana have in common, apart from being simply wonderful human beings, is that you can often hear either one of them giving a beautiful pause for thought on Radio 2. They're also two of my favourite presenters of some really deeply reflective personal episodes of Radio 4's Something Understood, which explores spiritual themes across different faiths and traditions using music and prose and poetry. And if you haven't ever listened to Something Understood, honestly, I really cannot recommend enough. If you search for them on the BBC website, hopefully some of their back catalogue can still be found there. And you can listen to it again, as many tens of thousands of people have. Now, the other thing they both have in common, and I'm nearly finished, is that I have the honour of calling both of them my teacher and my friend, even if I still owe Remona a honey cake that I promised her back in Rosh Hashanah, which we failed to meet each other. So hopefully she's still speaking to me. So I was delighted that neither of them hesitated when they accepted my invitation a few weeks ago to join us for this very special event, which at that point was just an idea in my head. So what I'll do now, and you'll be pleased to hear, because I've been waiting for hundreds of people to join us on YouTube and Facebook, and they're all filling the room. So I will now step out of the way, and I'm simply going to let them talk about the issues of the moment, what it means to observe religious traditions, different traditions under lockdown, whether it's Jewish or Muslim, what it's like celebrating Ramadan or Shavuot without a physical community, and talk about whether fasting and feasting can be meaningful in isolation. If any of you watching and listening have any questions for either or both of them, please feel free to just type them into the comments section in Facebook and YouTube. And some of my colleagues are keeping an eye out and they will try and get the messages to Remona and Shoshana. But if they're really in mid-flow of a beautiful conversation, we may not interrupt them. So do forgive us if we don't get to you. I'm now going to step out of the room. I'm going to carry on listening and watching, but you won't have to see me. And I'll hand over to Remona and Shoshana, who will unmute themselves now.
Thank you so much, Raymond, for that lovely introduction. I have to say that even if nothing else comes out of this evening, and even if there was no one listening, I would be delighted to be part of it, because Remona, you and I are way overdue for a cup of coffee.
We are. I'd love for Raymond to introduce me on every single platform ever in the future now. That was such a lovely introduction. Thank you, Raymond. And yeah, I really do miss catching up with you, Shoshana, as well. It has been a long time, even before lockdown. But I'm so grateful to JW3 as well, and to Raymond for bringing us together through this platform. So I'm really excited about our conversation.
Likewise. So you and I are just going to chat for a bit and ignore everyone else, because I am actually dying to know. Like, Eid was just on Sunday night, is that right? Sunday. So you have been pretty much
Sunday
fasting all day, every day for the last month up until Sunday. And I just can't imagine what that's like in lockdown. So what was it like doing fasting and doing iftars, the sort of what we would call breaking the fast meal, during lockdown?
Well, this has been a completely different Ramadan to my previous Ramadans. It's something I haven't really recognized. So we've been recalculating, recalibrating, understanding that we can't get together. Our families can't get together to break the fast with each other and fight over the last samosa, the last pakora, you know, those kind of like conversations that as well that happen around the iftar table. It's so special. And so I've really missed that this year. I've been breaking fast on my own. I live with my mother, who doesn't fast because of health reasons. And it's quite lonely. It can be quite lonely, but also there have been some incredible opportunities that lockdown has presented in this month. And it's actually been very, very active for me online, and also very reflective. So it's been very special in that way, and approaching Ramadan in a very unique way this year for me has really made a difference. So there's been pros and cons.
I'm sure. I'm curious. I mean, obviously the big challenge is the loneliness, right? The sort of doing something that is designed to be communal. It's designed to be, a bustling, vibrant, sense-filled crowd scene, and you're doing it on your own. So I can imagine that would be challenging. I guess I'm curious, because you indicated it was kind of mixed. There were certain things about it that actually were, I don't know, perhaps opened up opportunities for a different kind of Ramadan. Is there anything about it that you learned that you're planning to take with you into the next Ramadan? Or was this absolutely, utterly not to be repeated in any way, shape, or form?
It's really interesting, because I kind of looked at all of our faith traditions, all of our religious occasions with there is a sense of loss, and there's a sense of gain as well. So with the loss, there's been a loss around our physicality of community has been taken away. But then there are new pathways of engagement with our faith and with our communities, which have all been on screen, online. And actually the reach has gone much further than ever expected. So now it's actually gone global, and local mosques have got a global reach because they are doing talks online. They're doing kind of virtual iftars online. So everyone gathers together, congregates online to kind of listen to the talks, reflect, and then but it's like the actual food part is missing. So that bit where you're breaking bread together is missing. But you know, you can't have everything, you cannot get everything. It's an alternative, it's not a replacement, it's an alternative. You can never replace the physicality of community. And you know, so I do see that loss and that sense of loss, but the gain has been really creative. The way people have thought around it has been really, really quite extraordinary. Also learning, we do a lot of learning in Ramadan, a lot of reflection and engagement with the Quran. And I attended this course, a journey through the Quran course, and normally about 100 people in the room, 100 students. This one reached like 170 countries. It was the first time they took it online, and there were 13,000 registrations. So, you know, so digital learning has hugely, exponentially increased. And so the reach of that scholar who normally in a room has now, the access has opened up. And also it's interesting because it's been people who don't normally go to a community center or a mosque or, you know, the traditional kind of places of learning or engagement with faith. They have, the access for them has opened up. So, you know, they feel a little bit, well, I don't feel like I belong there. But now for them, those barriers have melted away. And they feel that there is that anonymity has helped in their access to spirituality. And that's been really fascinating to see. So, yeah. And I really want to know also about how you're, you know, with Passover and the Seders, how did that change? And how has your connection as a rabbi, how has that been impacted? I mean, that's something I'd be really interested to hear too, Shoshana, Rabbi Shoshana.
Oh, please don't call me Rabbi Shoshana. That's I'm just Shoshana, you know that. But everything you're saying is resonating for me as I think about Passover, because very similar to Iftar, it's a shared dramatic meal, right? And to do it not sharing it with, you know, at least a full house is crazy, unprecedented. And yet something happened this year that has never happened before. And I'm thinking, why has it never happened? And that is that we had a Seder. We did it, my family's from America and some of my husband's family is in Canada. And we all decided to do a Seder together. So for them, it was still early in the day. And for us, it was sort of evening time. But we had 40 members of the family, you know, sitting around the table. And I'm certain that next year, even when we're not in lockdown, please God, we're going to continue somehow, even if it's only for the first half hour of it, looping in the entire family. Now, why haven't we ever done that before? I don't know. But it was, for me, it was so special because I'm usually here in the UK with my husband's family, who I adore, and they're wonderful. I haven't had Seder with my family in years and years and years. And to have Seder with his family and my family in the same room is something that is not physically possible for us to do. And yet this year we did it. So, you know, Passover is a holiday about redemption. And it was beautiful and it was redemptive, and we felt so close as a family, even though we were all in isolation. So there's a real paradox in that. It resonated for me what you were saying about the barrier to entry being lower. And you and I have often commiserated about our introvert tendencies. And I know one of the real challenges for me doing the kind of interfaith work that you and I have we do it together, but I always have this little like mini panic attack before I walk into a mosque, right? Of like, is this my space? Do I belong? How am I going to feel? Will I be accepted? You know, and like if you're holding my hand, then we're okay. But otherwise, the barrier to entry is quite high. And I just wonder whether for those of us who do interfaith work, maybe this is a way to lower that barrier where I can experience an iftar, or I can go to a service in a church or a mosque. In fact, one of the rabbis I was speaking to recently, an Orthodox rabbi who, because of his belief system, does not ever enter a church building. He said, wow, I'm going to church, right? Because he can go and speak in a church, right, to a Christian congregation online in a way that he can't do in person. Really interesting. We actually have
it has boom. It's so fascinating. Yeah.
Say that again.
And I was just saying, it's really fascinating just hearing you, and I hope you can hear me.
Yep. We're good.
Yeah. What you were saying about the accessibility and how, you know, imams and rabbis and vicars have opened up the gates and the doors of their mosques and their synagogues and churches to everyone now. So there isn't the barriers are gone, and the anxiety around attending these things has dissipated. So it's fascinating, and in a way it's almost like it's being democratized more. So faith is online. It's just a lot more. You know, it's for everybody. And what you were talking about with interfaith, yeah, it for me, it's easy for me to go to a church, or I feel comfortable going to a synagogue, you know, because that's just something that has been part of who I am. But I know for some people, it's something that it's nervous for some people. You know, they feel nervous about it. So yeah, the whole online thing, I think there should be a nice harmony now. We need to give people options so they don't have to physically come. They could attend online. There should be that option that's you know, concurrent.
Yeah, can I push that in another direction, which is you and I both come from traditions where there's often a different roles for men and women. And another Orthodox woman was saying to me how fascinating it is, because there's no mechitza, there's no separation wall between the men and the women. And when she goes online to pray, everybody's just online. and she said it's a very odd feeling for her. And I wonder what it's like in your online mosque in terms of some of the gender barriers. Have those come down?
For some women, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, nearly a third of UK mosques, for example, they don't have space for women. Because of various reasons. I mean, I often go, in Ramadan, I go to do the night prayers. So I go to the bigger mosques where they do have a huge space for women. But, you know, a lot of women, you know, can't get access to these places, or they can't get access to scholars. They can't get their questions answered. But now, because of the digital space, they are in the chat box directly asking like imams and sheikhs, you know, okay, you know, their questions. And it's suddenly like we have this direct access, and even they're feeding back, they're reading the chat box and responding to you immediately. Whereas normally if you go to a talk, all the men are at the front asking the questions and all the women are behind going like, can we get through? You know, so it's changed that. And one lady I saw on my Facebook was just saying, this has been great for me, because I've been able to access so much as a woman that I can't normally access. And, you know, these are issues that we all have to keep addressing in our faith communities. And, you know, and like, look at why is that access not open to all of us when it should be? So it's really interesting to see how it has, you know, taken away those barriers for all of us now. So we're all equal online. It's like equality online.
Has there been pushback on that? Are people saying, oh no, now the women are chatting and they have a voice?
Not that I've seen. I mean, well, not the forums that I've been on. No, not at all. And even with night prayers as well. So there was a few of my friends actually, who they're not that particularly religious, but now they've actually wanted to connect. with their faith or with their spirituality, and they are attending Friday reminders that have been replacing like the Friday services in mosques. So you have Friday prayers. So they have reminders and they're listening to that. Or during Ramadan, they had night prayers. There was one, not everyone does it. I don't follow the opinion that you can worship online with an imam online, but there has been that option there. And I know one of my friends she's prayed every single night in Ramadan, digital night prayers, following an imam who's in another part of London. And she said, I've never been to the mosque every night. And yet every night I have prayed behind that imam online. You know, it really is mind-boggling to see how our faith engagement is completely being kind of revolutionized.
And when, I mean, I imagine, you know, lockdown is going to end in a gradual sort of way, right? I don't imagine it's going to suddenly, you know, spring back to life. But over time, do you think this is going to stick? Or do you think things will go back to women feeling like, oh, you know what, I'm not going to do night prayers, you know, because, you know, there's really no space for me, because and the mosques will stop doing it online? Or do you think I think it's a collapsing of space, isn't it? When we're all in our own homes doing it. I find that as well. I've been taking classes all over the world. Like, I'm studying with whoever I want to study with right now. And I can just log into their class and learn with them. And it's just as easy as logging into the class and learning with the person down the street. So I don't want to lose that, but I wonder whether our institutions are going to be able to adapt to that long term. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions, isn't it? Is it going to make them more redundant, our places of worship, in the future after this lockdown? Are people going to feel more distance from it? Not everyone has different relationships with these traditional places of worship anyway. There are people who are retired, who they need that, they crave that connection, and that's the only place they will meet their friends, you know, by going to the mosque or the synagogue. And then there are other young people who are like, you know what, I express my faith online, so I don't really need that traditional space. So there's different ways of engagement for different people. I think that this entire lockdown is making us all reconfigure our relationships, not just with faith, with everything. And I think that we are now, I actually, in my prayers, I'm praying that I don't say I want to go back to normal. I want to go back to a better normal. You know, I want to go back to where we are more compassionate with each other. We are thinking about our connections more, our connections with God, our connections with each other. So, and our connection with the planet as well, and what we're doing, you know, at all levels of society. It just, I want there to be a wiser approach when we come back into the world, when we're out of lockdown. And I hope and pray that the way our faith communities have kind of flourished online, that part of that can also go forward in tandem with, you know, reestablishing our traditional forms of communal worship. So yeah, I hope that, I mean, I can't project, but I think that people are now rethinking things, and we've had a long period of time to do that. So it hasn't been short enough that we kind of forget. We've had to recondition ourselves. And I do hope that we just don't slip back into a normal, but that we go back to we create a better space for ourselves.
So this may be a first. I'm going to respond to your prayer with the traditional Hebrew, Ken Yehi Ratzon, may that be God's will. Because I think you're right. No one would have wished this, and there's been horrific things that have happened, and I don't want to ignore that side of it. And on the other hand, when horrific things happen, if we come out of that and with nothing to no wisdom, no sense of what could be different moving forward, then we've lost an opportunity. And I think you're right that we have had to learn. We've had to stretch new muscles. We've had to try new things. We've had to, to go back to my Zoom Seder. My parents, I've been trying for years to get them to talk to me on Zoom and to talk to their grandchildren on Zoom. And it's just all too complicated and all too difficult. And no. But when I said, we're doing a Seder, will you let me give you a Zoom tutorial? They said, okay. And now they can do it because they've got that skill, right? So then the question is, okay, now what do you want to do with that skill moving forward? We're starting to get some questions coming in, which I'm delighted.
I have so many questions for you. I have
well, okay, I get to ask you a question from online, and then you can ask me a question. And because this is a really interesting question from Suzanne, who is curious about your celebration of Eid, and she wants to know whether your Eid was sort of similar to my Zoom Seder, or globally, could people just not resist the social distancing and just needed to be together? Were there places that people actually did meet together, or what was Eid like?
Yeah, so normally Eid has been an absolute buzz, community buzz. Like last year I went with my mom. Last year I went with my mom to Eid in the park, because now Eid is in, like, Ramadan's in the summer. So everyone's praying in like a big park together, and there's funfair rides, and thousands of people are praying next to each other. And I met my brother there, my twin nieces, and it was just so wonderful. This year I woke up and I was like, I can't do that. I can't have the communal prayer. I can't have going house hopping. Sometimes we do house hopping, and we're going and we're eating about 4 breakfasts and like 3 lunches. And by the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, I can't eat anymore. I can't have another samosa. I can't have another cup of tea. And it's been really strange, kind of refiguring that, and like not being with my family, my bigger family, not being with my friends. I was going to invite you this year. We were going to have the biggest Eid party in the garden this year that we've had so far. And so that's been really sad for me. So I woke up, it was just my mom. I woke up and we had a Zoom Eid breakfast together with my family. And so we all got online and we all put our food out and we ate together and just chatted together, showed each other our clothes, and people were opening their Eid presents online. So that was tough. And I know there are also some people who did have a socially distant Eid. So they would go to their parents' garden and they'd be at the end of the garden and they'd just say, oh, Eid Mubarak. No Eid Mubarak hugs, unfortunately. So that happened because people are like, they are like craving that company, like craving that kind of, connection. So it was really hard on Eid day for so many people. So that's why I wanted to ask you about how the Seder worked on Passover. Like, how did you feel that connection then? And also, how did it work out theologically as well? Was there anything that, obviously it's meant to be after, I hear it's after midnight and it goes on. And obviously with the time zones is different. How did that all work out?
Yeah, so I love that you think that my Seder is a theological moment, because it's it's my family, and we have everyone from, people who are very, very spiritual to people who just want to know, when do we eat, right? And usually you have them all in one room together. I have to say, what was really nice about this Seder is that I was the host on Zoom, so I was in charge. And so I could just mute anyone who I knew. Or I could just say, when are we going to eat? Whenever you want, be my guest. But what was sweet about it is that the teenagers, like all the teenage cousins, were chatting away with each other. I have no idea what they were talking about, and I'm sure I don't want to know. But they were engaged for hours and hours, right, of that, which for me is what Seder is about. It's about family coming together and telling the story. So I'm sure every time I said something that they thought was a little bit dorky, they took the mickey out of me, which is exactly what they should be doing, right? We also just did really fun things because we had a screen, so we sort of made the most of it. So for instance, you're supposed to have the youngest member of the family ask the 4 questions. Well, what we did was we took an app and took a photo of our dog and animated it so that our 2-year-old puppy asked the 4 questions, and I put that up on screen, and it was really funny. And so we did those kinds of things. And then you have to hide the afikomen and find it. So I did sort of an elaborate game of 20 questions where I said the afikomen is hidden somewhere in the world and you have 20 questions to figure out where it is. So, you know, we found ways to adapt, and everyone had a great time. We didn't get the hugs, and of course that was missing, but it worked. It worked its magic. And for me, that's where God's presence really is that magic of family coming together to tell our story. I am a little bit worried though because we've got Shavuot coming up this weekend, and I kind of have Shavuot plans. But after that, the next big holiday is going to be Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So I actually have a serious question for you, which is this fasting thing. Okay, it's one thing when I go to the synagogue and I'm surrounded by hundreds of people who are fasting and praying, and I get kind of, I don't know whether it's supported or distracted, but one of the two. I probably go back and forth between the two, and it carries me through the fasting element of Yom Kippur. If I'm sitting at home fasting, I just don't know how I'm going to do it. So you've been doing that every day for the past month. So please tell me the secret.
So I think Yom Kippur is very different. I mean, obviously it's much longer. I don't think I could do a 25-hour fast, but it's different because you're all together like all day. So with Ramadan, you don't necessarily have to be together. It's just like normally it's just for the prayers or the night prayers. So, but there is a spiritual energy that you get when you're together, when you know you're all fasting together, yes, and you're all praying together. There is something that helps. There's like some kind of solidarity that happens through that, and it's like a synergy. It's a synergy, yes, that happens. Fasting in isolation, or just like being spiritual and reflecting in isolation, that's when you really know, that's when you become really intimate with God and with more. And I think with this entire crisis and this lockdown has made me reflect more than ever before, and actually become closer, because the noise is kind of gone, and the people are gone. Even though people are the heart of our communities, for both of our communities, both our faith communities, it's kind of stripped it all back to how it all began. And for our tradition, like Prophet Muhammad started off in seclusion, because we were upon him in a cave, and that's how the first revelation of the Quran came to him. And so that kind of going back to the beginning and thinking about, okay, this, people we were alone, we were persecuted in our faith as well. And so reflecting on all of that again has really helped me get through Ramadan, and I hope that helps you. I don't know if that helps you to get through Yom Kippur as well. And the story of Jonah is something that is very pertinent to both our faith traditions, and I know that the story is often talked about on Yom Kippur.
Yes.
And that is more, I think, more poignant now. So I would love to know how you would view the story of Jonah now, coming up to or thinking about Yom Kippur.
That's so interesting.
And would it resonate in a different way?
Well, it is now. It's going to, now that you've asked the question, clearly. And I'm also just looking because Bilal has asked a question about what spiritual lessons can we learn from isolation from the Jewish tradition or either tradition. And it's, you're right that Jonah, the story when he has those 3 days inside of the fish, which I've always thought of as just like major timeout, right? God saying, Jonah, just go sit in your timeout corner and have a little think, right? It does pick up on a Jewish tradition, which is, it's not mainstream. Mainstream Judaism is very much about community. You pray, preferably, you can pray alone, but you preferably pray in a quorum of at least 10 people. There's a preference for community. If you can't have community, then obviously you do it alone. And you're right, this lockdown has because the preference is for community, this lockdown has created space for us to do things not in community. And one of the things that I think we can learn from that is this Hasidic phrase, hitbodedut, to be alone. The Hasidim, there were times where they would say, just put yourself alone, because that is when you're in a very, very vulnerable space. And from that vulnerability, you will be able to access God in a way that when you're in a group, we all know, like you kind of let the group carry you, and you don't have to always pull your weight. You can kind of let the group pull your weight, and then you pull it a little bit. And that's part of the magic for me of being in a group, because I find prayer so difficult. And so that notion of Jonah sitting in the whale and that hitbodedut, that being alone, I'm going to let that stretch me. But I'll also say that Jonah is a reluctant prophet, and I'm a reluctant lockdown person, and Jonah is also very much a comic book. It's clear to me that the author of Jonah is it's very profound points, but making them in funny ways. I mean, to have a big fish eat him, or to have cows dressed in sackcloth, repenting. And I do think that is also a lesson. I don't think spirituality always needs to be serious. I think that that having a sense of fun and creativity and spontaneity is part of spirituality. And one of the things that technology has allowed us to do, like my kids, chatting with their cousins, during Seder, is to allow some of that sense of fun to come through. People do it with their backgrounds, right? There was somebody, I was on a meeting where somebody had a TARDIS in the background, and it's fun. And why not have a little bit of fun and be expressive and allow that intimacy? So maybe we can be inspired by Jonah's comic bits as well.
Definitely. That sounds wonderful. That sounds so good.
Yeah.
Also, as you're leading, your people look to you as well for as the rock, as the pillar, as inspiration. Have you ever found it a struggle to kind of in your own navigation of this entire crisis, that in order to lighten the burden of other people, have you had to take on more for yourself in order to make it easier for people who are looking to you for inspiration?
Goodness, absolutely, but I don't think that's unique to me, and I'm not sure whether that has anything to do with my rabbinic title. I feel like there are people who have been very, very lucky, like myself. I have been healthy throughout this whole crisis, have everyone who lives in my house. I have a job that I can do from home. I have been able to get outside and walk around and enjoy the sunshine. A lot of the work that I do is in Africa, in Rwanda and Ghana and Ethiopia. Those are 3 countries that I do a lot of work in, and I am constantly speaking to people in those areas. And social distancing, hygiene, I mean, if you don't have running water, forget it. So, the fact that all of us have certain capacities, and we are so, so blessed to live where we do, I think any of us who have that kind of situation on our hands have started to shoulder the burden for people who, whether it's, my colleagues in Africa, or whether it's people who are just, working flat out as healthcare workers or stocking shelves somewhere. We do have to shoulder the burden for them. I've had just enough of a taste of homeschooling to be forever grateful to the people who educate my children. Okay, I mean, I vaguely remember now how to do quadratic equations, but goodness, teachers, we undervalue them. So I guess I want to turn your question around and say, yes, I feel like I have taken on the burdens of other people, but but I've taken them on because I've been so lucky to have the capacity to take these on. And I see so many other people, and it doesn't matter whether they're, religious figures or not, people who are going around collecting for food banks, people who are, using their home, their WhatsApp groups to figure out who needs medicine in their neighborhood and go and deliver it. Just all sorts of acts of kindness and generosity, from people who have capacity to people who are in need. Yeah. I mean, I imagine it's the same for you, that you've seen that in your community as well.
Yeah, I've seen it across the communities. It's just been so heartwarming. I mean, as you said, we're lucky. Like I'm in a position of privilege, and I completely know that I'm safe. I have a house, I have running water, and I have space to move around. I live in the countryside, so I know that I've found so many blessings in this month of Ramadan, and just in the lockdown, finding the blessings because I have these comforts and these luxuries, really. And I know that people are struggling. There are people who are struggling through this, because I was speaking to somebody who said, "Oh, I've loved Ramadan. This has been so great. Oh, I can have another one like this." And I said, "No." I said, think about all that. You're okay. You're top of a high-rise building in a flat. They can't even open the windows, and they can only go out for an hour a day. And they're staying in like a one-bedroom flat with their 3 kids. It's we need to think about everybody. We need to think about, the whole community. There are blessings and there are huge challenges for people as well at the same time, concurrently. So yeah, I have seen people in my own Muslim communities, they have been extraordinary. They have, where they haven't been able to distribute things properly in a normal setting, they have thought outside of the box, and they are, finding, as you said, apps, and they are calling around, they're creating WhatsApp. I know people who are doing things for strangers. They're like, "Do you know anyone in this area, in Croydon? Because my elderly parents are there. Can you find someone to help them?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know somebody." And I got a relative of mine to go and deliver some food to someone else's elderly parents just on the doorstep. And that gave that person a lot of reassurance. So, people are doing things for each other like never before. And I think that is something that I'm really, truly grateful for, that, people are being a lot more compassionate. They're thinking, even like my own circle of friends and family, they're thinking about me more. I'm thinking about them more. I've never had so many Eid presents before. Before now, I had so many, and it was great. I was like, this is so nice. And even I sent out more Eid cards than I ever have before, because we realize how important our loved ones are. We realize how important people are in our community, and we want to appreciate them more in these times even more. So that's why people are reaching out, and that's why people are connecting. And when it boils down to it, it's about our human connections, it's about our relationships, and that is something that is so valuable. It can never be undervalued or taken away, I hope. Oh, Roman's come up. Is that time out for us?
I think we are running out of time. We have one more question, which I think we'll make our last one, and it's to both of us, and it's not an easy one. The question is, what's next for both of you? And I'm going to leave that open in terms of either what's next, if you have something specific that you are planning to focus on while lockdown continues, or what are you going to take with you out of lockdown, and you've now made it part of who you are, and you're going to carry that forward into the world?
Gosh, I'm only allowed to choose one thing. So the one thing that I have learned really on a short time, the one thing that I think it relates to both of us and our faith communities, that we were kind of talking about earlier, that the relationships that we have forged between our communities, between different faith communities, have been crucial in this time of lockdown. And I have been called upon by people like Raymond and others as well, who have said, that, can you just come and can we do something together online? I did an interfaith kosher iftar the other day, and that was with a synagogue in North London. It was so wonderful, and it's because of the connections that we'd made pre-lockdown, obviously, that could happen, and the trust that we'd built up. So I think going forward, I definitely think that I value those connections much more than ever. And I know that we, in these kind of times of crisis, there's also a lot of antipathy, and there's a lot of xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and all these things. These bad things also come out of people, and we need to kind of work harder to combat that and to challenge that, and to be seen to be together, and also authentically together, not just together for the show of it. It's literally authentically, really genuinely be together as friends, as allies, as as brothers and sisters, and I think that for me is something that I will definitely take forward from this time. That was a very long-winded answer.
No, it wasn't. It was beautiful, and it's so true, because our friendship started way before this, and I feel like you're right. This is just another chapter in it, and it demonstrates the strength of this friendship, that I can have this conversation without starting it with a hug, and that we can both feel that hug even through the internet line. That's really beautiful. Thank you. It's a hard one.
It is true.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I'm going to take with me.
I really appreciate you so much. I do.
It's mutual. It is mutual, my dear. I think one of the things I always admire about you, and it gives me strength every time I'm with you, is that I do feel your spirituality and your closeness to God. And I mentioned that prayer is not an easy thing for me. It never has been. I'm a musician, and I feel transcendence when I'm playing piano. I find it very, very difficult to get to that same place with words. But one of the things I've started doing, because I also hate washing my hands. I've always hated washing my hands. It's even when I was a child. I don't like the sensation of I just don't like it. And obviously, I do wash my hands, and I've been washing my hands a lot. And when this started, I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to really resent washing my hands if I don't come up with some way to make this work for me. And so, how you're supposed to sort of sing happy birthday while you're washing hands? That's 20 seconds. And I was like, that is not going to work for me. So I decided I would say, there's a prayer that you say when you wake up in the morning, Remona Aly, which is thanking God for restoring your soul and giving you back, and allowing you to be alive and to be in the world.
The same.
And do you have that too?
No, oh my goodness, it too.
Okay,
restoring our soul back to us. Basically
right,
the same.
So it's supposed to be the first thing you say when you wake up. You open your eyes, you realize you're still alive, you're still breathing, and you say, thank you, God. The word for breath and the word for soul are the same. So you say, thank you for giving me my breath and my soul. And I thought, that's it. That takes about 20 seconds for me to sing. And so whenever I wash my hands, I'm going to do that, because that's me saying, thank you, God, for keeping me alive long enough that I can actually wash my hands. And I quite enjoyed washing my hands. And it's one of the few times that prayer has actually worked for me. So I think, I can't promise this. So as I say, bli neder, without vowing, without promising, but I think I'm going to keep that practice moving forward, because it means that whenever I wash my hands, I feel God's presence in my life. I feel this connection to the world, and I feel gratitude. And that's very much what I want to come out of this with. Is I have the same fears that you do, that with the economy going where it is and where people are afraid, that we know that that is a ripe territory for all sorts of horrible things to happen in society. And the way to counter that is to foster gratitude, and to foster kindness and to foster generosity. And at its best, that is what both of our faith traditions do. So I'm so grateful to JW3 for giving us this opportunity to connect with each other, and for me to be inspired as always with by your words and by your presence, my dear. I love you, and I wish you a what can you say after Eid? Can you say, like, is there any sort of like
you can
post-Eid thing?
Still say Eid Mubarak. I'm fine with that.
Ramadan Mubarak.
I mean, I'm still saying Eid Mubarak to people, so.
Eid Mubarak, my dear, and thank you so much. I turn it back over to Raymond.
Wow, thank you both. Thank you both. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you both so much. It was such a privilege, as I'm sure people at home, and we have had hundreds joining us on various different platforms, including in watch parties, if you know your Facebook terminology. I know, Shoshana, that's one of your kids can explain it to you. There's been people joining us in different watch parties on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, and I'm sure that the conversations will carry on. I feel it was a real privilege, given that you both shared such personal reflections. It was, for me personally, uplifting. It was insightful. It was witty and amusing and just perfect. So thank you so much. Thank you for giving up your evening to join us, especially you've probably both had, like me, a long day of other Zoom meetings. So to let us eat into your evening is great. One of the messages I'm going to take away from there that links us into our festival of Shavuot that's coming up is, Remona, the story we read on the festival of Shavuot is the story of Ruth. And I was saying with my staff team earlier today that one of the real messages that comes out of that story is what we call in Hebrew chesed, which gets translated as loving kindness, or it's a doing word. It's an action word. It's not just the love that you feel as an emotion. It's the love that you show, that you exemplify through doing. And everything you just both described was about chesed, and it's something that we've seen so much of over these last 2 months. And it's something that we have to take forward. And I think this Shavuot, as Jews all over the world are listening to the story of Ruth, I hope it's that message of chesed that we hear really loudly, and chesed not just in our own communities but between each other. And because it is the festival of Shavuot coming up, I want to tell everybody that's listening, hundreds of people joining us this evening, that for me, one of my absolute favorite traditions of Shavuot is the Tikkun Lail, where we stay up all night learning. It's one of those things that I think that links Shavuot and Ramadan, because it is our revelation. And it's really difficult. You both explained how difficult it's been celebrating our faith festivals when we can't be all together physically, and we're finding innovative ways, as you both described. Seder, the stories that Shoshana was telling, I'm sure everybody at home like me was nodding and saying, yes, that was what it was like in my house. So we at JW3 have found an innovative way to do Tikkun Lail Shavuot. What normally happens is we stay up all night together. We get together in rooms, in synagogues and in people's houses. We study Torah, we grapple with Jewish ideas, we learn together. So we have to find a way around the challenge. So for a lot of Jews, for those that follow the traditional halakha, the traditional Jewish law, the idea of being able to log online once the festival comes in isn't an option for them. And for other Jews, it is. And JW3 is cross-communal. We bring every kind of Jew and non-Jews together. So our best way to do that is to bring this tradition 24 hours earlier. We're going to do, for the first time ever, an online Tikkun Lail Shavuot 24 hours before the festival comes in. And of course, if we're going to do something unique, a festival of Jewish learning and culture that is unique, then we have to partner with the wonderful Limud, an organization that I know Shoshana is very close to your heart. Remona, I know you know of. So we're really excited that Limud and JW3, we've joined forces to bring something to the public called Revelation. And that's our late night exploration of Jewish wisdom and performance and music after dark. And it's happening tomorrow night. That's Thursday night. It's 8:30
Wednesday
UK
night.
time. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night. It's Tuesday today. So tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 24 hours before Shavuot, 8:30 UK time. People can join in from anywhere around the world. We've got 20 phenomenal Jewish educators and artists and actors and writers and performers and rabbis and comedians and musicians and DJs, the famous Robertson's Disco. And from 8:30 p.m. UK time, people can join us, and you can dip in and out all night, or you can stay for the whole thing. And it's just literally a ridiculously low price of £5. So I really hope that many of the people watching and listening to us right now, before they log off their computers, when this finishes in a second, go straight to jw3.org.uk and book their place at Revelation. And we hope we'll see you all at Sinai. Shoshana, Ramona, thank you so much for saying yes to this and for giving of yourselves so personally. Until I get to see you in person with that honey cake and with that